It was supposed to be just another stop on the road. Emily was tired. The storm was getting worse, and the glowing vacancy sign of a lonely roadside motel felt like salvation. But the moment she stepped inside, she knew something wasn't right. The air was too still. The clerk never smiled, and the room they gave her smelled like it hadn't been touched in years. She tried to shake it off until she heard footsteps outside her door. Slow, heavy, relentless. With her breath caught in her throat, she peeked through the peephole and froze. A man stood there staring straight at her door, smiling as though he knew she was watching. Emily thought the nightmare was only beginning, but the truth was far worse, because sometimes the real horror isn't the stranger outside your door. It's the one already waiting inside. The storm had been chasing Emily for miles, slamming against her car with sheets of rain so heavy she could barely see the yellow lines on the road. Her wipers worked furiously, but the blur of water and streaks of headlights from passing trucks made the drive feel like some endless tunnel. She hadn't planned on stopping. Her goal was to push through until dawn, but exhaustion was clawing at her. Every mile made her eyelids heavier. Every flash of lightning across the sky made her grip the wheel tighter. That was when she saw it. A flickering neon sign through the downpour, glowing like a mirage. Vacancy! Relief washed over her as she slowed, pulling into a cracked asphalt lot with faded parking lines. The motel looked as if it hadn't been updated since the 1970s. One side of the neon sign was burnt out, so it only read VCAN-Y. 3 cars were scattered across the lot, their windows fogged, silhouettes inside unclear. Emily caught herself staring too long and quickly looked away, telling herself they were just travelers like her. She grabbed her bag, pulled her hood over her dripping hair, and dashed across the puddles to the office door. The bell above it jingled weakly as she stepped inside. The lobby smelled of mildew and stale smoke. The overhead light buzzed with a faint electrical hum, flickering every few seconds. Behind the counter sat a thin, pale man hunched over a ledger. His hands moved slowly, deliberately scratching notes with a dull pencil. He didn't look up when Emily approached. I'd like a room for the night," she said softly, her voice breaking the silence. The man didn't greet her, didn't smile. He simply slid a tarnished brass key across the counter. "Room 7, he muttered, his tone flat and cold. His eyes finally lifted, and when they met hers, something in his stare made her stomach twist. It was empty, like looking at a reflection in dead water. Emily forced a polite thank you and hurried out. The rain had slowed, but the night felt heavier now, as if the air itself was pressing down. She unlocked room 7 and stepped inside. The smell hit her first, damp, metallic, like rust mixed with mold. The wallpaper was peeling in long strips, and the carpet was stained in dark patches she didn't want to think about. A single lamp buzzed faintly, casting long shadows that made the corners look deeper than they were. She tossed her bag on the chair, peeled off her wet jacket, and sat on the sagging mattress. The springs groaned beneath her weight. For a moment she closed her eyes, telling herself it was just one night, just a place to sleep. She was safe. But then, footsteps. Slow, heavy, steady. They moved down the hallway, stopping right outside her door. Her breath caught. She rose carefully, pressing her ear to the door. Silence. Then, with her hands shaking, she leaned toward the peephole and froze. A man was standing there, perfectly still, facing her door, smiling. Emily stumbled back from the peephole, her heart pounding in her chest so loudly she thought it might echo through the walls. The man outside didn't knock. He didn't move. He just stood there, grinning like he had been waiting for her all along. Her trembling fingers reached for the phone on the nightstand. She yanked it to her ear, pressing the buttons in panic. Nothing. Dead silence. Not even static. Her throat tightened. This was impossible. A motel phone should always connect to the front desk. Suddenly, a soft creak echoed from behind her. Emily turned sharply, her pulse spiking. The window. She had locked it when she entered, she was sure she had, but now it was cracked open. The curtain swayed gently from the storm outside, and then she saw it. On the dresser lay a folded piece of motel stationery. She hadn't noticed it before. Her shaking hands picked it up, scrawled in uneven handwriting smeared with what looked like dirt, or was it something darker? Were 2 words. Don't scream. The paper slipped from her fingers. A sound, low and steady, came from the shadows in the corner of the room. She whipped around, and her stomach dropped to the floor. A man was sitting in the chair near the window. He was half shrouded in shadow, his clothes dark and worn, his hair disheveled. His posture was unnervingly calm, legs crossed, hands folded in his lap as though he had been waiting for this very moment. His eyes fixed on her unblinking. Emily's scream caught in her throat. The man raised one finger to his lips. Shh. His voice was low, almost gentle, but it sent a chill slicing down her spine. If you want to live, don't make a sound. Her entire body shook. Or what? What do you want? He tilted his head, studying her. His face was drawn, pale but not cruel. Not yet. His eyes darted briefly toward the door. Then back to her. I'm not here to hurt you, he whispered. I'm here to warn you. Emily backed toward the bathroom, her every instinct screaming at her to escape, but her legs felt like lead. Her mind raced. Should she run? Should she fight? The man leaned forward, his voice tightening. They'll be coming soon. If they hear you, you won't have a chance. Emily shook her head violently, her voice breaking. Who's coming? The man's lips pressed into a thin line. He didn't answer. Instead, he stood slowly, his shadow stretching across the room. His presence filled the air, and suddenly the silence outside felt too heavy, too intentional. Her breath trembled. This wasn't random. This wasn't just a stranger breaking in. This was something worse. Emily's back pressed against the cold bathroom doorframe as her eyes darted to the stranger, pacing across the dim room. The shadows made him look even more menacing, his figure long and twisted against the peeling wallpaper. Her voice shook. You're insane. I'm calling the police. The man stopped abruptly, turning his gaze on her with a sharpness that froze her in place. His voice dropped to a whisper, urgent and heavy. Do you really think anyone's going to come out here? You don't get it. You checked in, and now you're part of it. Emily blinked, her throat dry. Part of what? Before he could answer, the phone on the nightstand rang. The sound was deafening in the silence. Both of them turned, frozen. Emily's instinct screamed at her to grab it, to beg for help. But the stranger lunged forward first, ripping the receiver from its cradle. No, he said into the phone, his voice clipped and sharp. Not yet. Emily stared, horrified. Who was he talking to? His knuckles turned white as he gripped the phone harder. I said not yet. He slammed it down with such force the lamp flickered. The stranger's chest rose and fell as he turned toward her, his face pale but his eyes burning. They're coming. Emily shook her head. You're trying to scare me. You broke in here. You're one of them. No, he snapped, stepping closer. His voice lowered again, but the urgency didn't fade. The clerk you saw when you checked in? He's not just some washed-up old man. He works for them. This motel. He gestured toward the walls, the floorboards, the very air around them. It's not what it looks like. It's a trap. A feeding ground. Emily's breath caught. What are you talking about? They lure people in, travelers, people who won't be missed. Once you're in, you don't check out. Not alive. Her stomach twisted, but she forced herself to scoff. That's insane. You expect me to believe this? The stranger didn't argue. Instead, he motioned toward the window. Then look. Emily hesitated, but her curiosity and fear pulled her closer. She slowly parted the curtain just enough to peek outside. Her blood ran cold. Figures were moving in the rain. At least 4, maybe 5. Shadows, tall and deliberate, circling the motel like predators around prey. Their footsteps crunched faintly on the gravel, slow and methodical. Not wandering, hunting. She stepped back, her breath shallow, her vision swimming. The stranger's voice was calm now, but it cut straight through her. You don't have to believe me, but if you don't trust me, if you don't move right now, you're going to die here. The pounding started at the door. Heavy fists, keys rattling. Low voices on the other side, too muffled to make out words, but too steady to be human. Emily's body trembled. She realized with growing terror that the stranger was right. The motel wasn't a safe stop. It was a cage, and she was trapped inside. The pounding on the door grew louder, more violent. The cheap wood splintered at the edges with every slam, the brass handle rattling as if it might snap off at any second. Emily staggered backward, her breath shallow, her hands trembling. The stranger's eyes darted to the bathroom. Now, he hissed. Through the vent. It's the only way. What? Emily's voice cracked. We'll never. The lock on the door clicked. Metal scraping against metal. Someone was working a key into the knob. The stranger didn't wait. He shoved past her, ripped the bathroom vent cover free with a screech of bending metal and crawled inside. Move. Emily's legs felt paralyzed, but instinct screamed louder than fear. She dropped to her knees, squeezing into the narrow shaft just as the door to her room burst open. The sound that followed chilled her blood. Calm, steady footsteps. Not running, not rushing, just entering, like they already knew they had her. Inside the vent, every scrape of her jeans against the metal felt like thunder in the silence. She bit her lip until she tasted blood to keep from sobbing. The stranger led ahead of her, his voice low, echoing in the tight space. Don't stop. Don't look back. Emily crawled, her heart slamming with every second. Then voices, multiple, male and female, low and deliberate. She could hear them in her room, searching. Dragging something heavy across the floor, she wanted to cry. She wanted to wake up. The shaft emptied them into another hallway. Dim lights flickered overhead, buzzing, barely cutting through the darkness. Emily froze when she realized where they were. Another wing of the motel. Doors lined the corridor, each identical, each silent, but not silent enough. From behind one of the doors came a muffled scream. Another deeper voice begged, then cut off sharply as if smothered. Emily slapped her hand over her mouth. Tears filled her eyes. The stranger grabbed her wrist. Don't listen. Keep moving. They stumbled down the hallway and burst into the lobby. The storm outside flashed through the windows, lightning illuminating the front desk. The clerk was waiting. He stood perfectly still behind the counter. His pale face stretched into a smile that made Emily's stomach lurch. In his hand gleamed a long kitchen knife, the blade catching the light. You should have stayed in your room, the clerk rasped. His voice was calm, too calm. Running only makes it worse. The stranger lunged. He tackled the clerk, the knife slicing across his arm as they crashed to the floor. The blade clattered, then slid across the tiles. Run! The stranger shouted through gritted teeth, struggling to keep the clerk pinned. Emily froze, her body torn between terror and instinct. She wanted to bolt, but something inside her screamed to fight. Her gaze landed on the red fire extinguisher mounted on the wall. Without thinking, she grabbed it, charged forward, and swung with every ounce of strength she had. The heavy metal smashed against the clerk's skull. He crumpled, blood spilling across the tiles. The stranger staggered to his feet, clutching his bleeding arm. He looked at Emily, his voice hoarse but filled with urgency. Now go! Together they shoved through the glass doors into the storm, the cold rain washing the blood from their hands. But behind them, the motel still glowed in the darkness, waiting, watching. The storm had finally broken. Emily's car sped down the empty highway, tires hissing against the wet asphalt. The world outside was quiet now, the sky bruised with the pale hues of dawn. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles were white, but still they trembled. Her clothes were damp with rain, her hair plastered to her face, and streaks of blood, his blood or the clerk's, she didn't know, stained her sleeves. Beside her, in the passenger seat, the stranger sat in silence. His chest rose and fell heavily, his arm clutched where the knife had slashed him. For a long stretch of road, neither of them spoke. Finally, Emily found her voice. What was that place? The stranger didn't look at her. His eyes stayed on the road ahead, haunted, distant. His voice was low. A trap. A place that feeds on fear. People check in, but they don't leave. Not unless someone fights back. Emily swallowed hard. Her throat burned as she whispered, Why me? For the first time, he turned to look at her. His gaze wasn't cruel, it was tired, almost grateful. Because you were brave. Braver than anyone I've seen in there. His words sank into her, but before she could respond, the rising sun broke over the horizon. She squinted at the sudden light and lifted her hand to block it. When she lowered her hand again, her breath caught. The passenger seat was empty. Her foot slammed the brakes, the car screeching to a stop on the empty highway. Her chest heaved, eyes wide, scanning the seat, the back seat, the road behind her. He was gone. Heart hammering, she sat frozen until her gaze dropped to the seat beside her. There, resting neatly against the faded upholstery, was a folded piece of motel stationery. Her trembling fingers picked it up. The same handwriting as before, the same uneven scrawl. You saved me. Now save yourself. Don't ever stop fighting. Tears blurred her vision. She pressed the paper to her chest, her breaths ragged. For a long moment she sat in silence, the weight of what had happened crushing her, yet somehow, something inside her felt different. The fear was still there, but it no longer controlled her. She started the engine again, the car rolling forward under the pale morning sun. The road stretched endlessly ahead, unknown, uncertain, terrifying. But for the first time since she pulled into that cursed motel, she felt a flicker of something she thought she'd lost forever. Hope. Sometimes the scariest places aren't haunted by ghosts. They're built by the darkness in people. That motel may have been just one of many, waiting quietly on lonely highways for its next victim. But what Emily discovered is something we all forget. Fear only has power if we let it. Her courage, born in the darkest hour, became her way out, and it can be ours too. The world will always hold shadows, strangers, and doors we're afraid to open. But sometimes survival isn't just about running. It's about finding the strength to fight back and choosing to live.